Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's episode-by-episode review for Better Call Saul Season 3. This video is part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Better Call Saul. Every episode of Better Call Saul, one season at a time. In this video, I'll cover every episode of Season 3 of Better Call Saul. So, Season 3. I do think it's an improvement on Season 2, that is for sure. However, I still, when I watch Season 3, I'm reaffirmed in my opinion that Seasons 2 and 3 should have been one season. That they very easily could have, well, maybe not easily, they could have combined this into one season. Now, maybe they might have needed 13 episodes instead of 10, but I still think they could have combined it into one season. As I talked about in my Season 2 review, they could have 86'd the whole storyline with Jimmy going to Davis in Maine. It was interesting, it was done well, but it was ultimately unnecessary to the story, and they could have bypassed it easily. And I'm reaffirmed on that opinion when watching this season, because the season starts out really slow. And we have some story beats that, in my opinion, take way too long to get going. Like, it seems kind of self-indulgent to me, and I'll get into it more with the individual episodes, but how they have all these long, drawn-out montages that get across information that they could just as powerfully and easily get across in a much shorter amount of time. So, I never complained about this show's slow pace before, because I know that is a staple of the show. And I'm aware of it, and I still love the show regardless. In fact, sometimes I like how it really is slow-paced, because it allows more poignant and better character development. But in some of these seasons, particularly Season 2, and I think a little bit in this season as well, it does seem a bit self-indulgent, like they're sort of caught up in, ooh, this will look cool, the cool cinematography and cool editing, which, to be fair, they're really amazing at. But, I feel that way with any movie that takes too long to sort of self-congratulate itself and, oh, look how beautiful these shots are, is wasting time. You can have beautiful shots, but if you self-indulge it and the whole point of like a 15-minute scene is just isn't this beautiful, then in my opinion, that's not great storytelling. Now, I'm talking about movies in general. I don't think this season does it that badly, but it does do it a little bit, particularly in the first couple episodes of the season, where I feel like... But I'm talking specifically of the Mike storyline of him tracking down Gus. We get all these really long, drawn-out montages that show just how smart Mike is and able to track down Gus, and how smart Gus is and able to figure this out, where I love that storyline. Don't get me wrong, I love it. I think it's amazing, but I think they could have done it in a much shorter time, and the only reason it took as much screen time as it did is because they were being a bit self-indulgent. I think you could have very easily got across the same power of that storyline, the same information and the same emotional impact and the same intrigue in a shorter amount of time. Just my opinion. So that reasserts to me that, and also some of the Jimmy stuff in the beginning of the season dragged a bit, like the thing with the guy on from that Fifi airplane showing up and figuring out that Jimmy was conning him. Like, we didn't really need that. So I do feel like, particularly the first couple episodes of the season, could have been shortened and combined with Season 2 to make it more efficient, much better, more to the point, and still moving at a slow pace, just not a self-indulgent one. But anyway, that is just my humble opinion. Now, the other thing with Season 3 is a very different format to the two previous seasons, and if from recollection, because I haven't rewatched them yet, but from memory, the two seasons that come after this season as well. As Seasons 1, 2, 4, and 5 all have that sort of Game of Thrones format, where episode, like it starts out the beginning of the season set up, and it slowly builds. And episode 9 is a huge climax that like blows your mind and completely mind blowing. And then episode 10 is kind of the follow up to that, cleaning up the pieces and then setting up for the next season. I believe I call that the Game of Thrones format because that's basically what they did every season, well, until the last 2 seasons. But we never speak of those. Anyway, sorry. So it's basically that format for seasons 1, 2, 4, and 5, but not season 3. Season 3 had a different format because the first 2 episodes were kind of set up, as I said, I thought a bit too slow. And then, but it slowly starts to build starting in season 2, and it builds, but it climaxes in episode 5 rather than episode 9. So it's a fast build rather than a slow build. And then after episode 5, they kind of had to start over again and start building again. And the ending, like the episode 9 and 10, were good. They just weren't the climax. They weren't the exciting climax that all other seasons of this show have. They actually climaxed in the middle of the season with episode 5, which is very different because typically the middle season's where it dips. Every other season, I think, they kind of starts off with the setup that's strong, interesting, and then dips and kind of meanders in the middle, and then comes off with a strong ending. I think that correctly, again, it's been a while since I've seen 4 and 5, but I think that correctly describes 1, 2, 4, and 5. Whereas 3 is like they meander a bit for the first 2 episodes, but then strongly build up until season 5 has an amazing climax, and then we fall right back down in season 6 they had to start building up again, and they crank it up towards the end, but it never like reaches that height. Yeah. So that's my humble opinion on season 3. That's how I would describe it. But again, I do think this is definitely a return to form. And better, much better, more poignant, more powerful than season 2, but I still think they could have tightened it up a bit more. And I'm not saying, get rid of the slow pace. Keep the slow pace for sure. But they still could have tightened it up a bit more. Anyway, let me go ahead and get into the episodes of season 3. Let's start with the first episode, Mabel. Now, this is the episode that I felt was really slow. It's, again, not bad. Still a decent episode. Definitely has great character beats in it. Every episode does. And I do like the scenes that follow up on the season 2 finale, where Jimmy and Chuck are hanging, wall together, and they're reminiscing, and Jimmy, is just showing the brotherly love, but then Chuck has to cut it short and be like, don't think this reminiscence is gonna make me, stop going after you because you need to pay for what you did, which is harsh as hell, and sort of Chuck throwing down the gauntlet, where Jimmy is, of course, at this stage not aware of just how far Chuck is going to go, and that the whole entire thing was basically a setup. So that was interesting, but then, again, I already mentioned the thing about the military guy from the Fifi thing. This is when that comes into play, which I thought, it shows, at first, Jimmy didn't know how to deal with them, but then he's like, I'll threaten you, and so it's showing how he's able to overcome and, manipulate people and start to become Jimmy, but, we don't need that. Like, we have other scenes that do that better. I think that was unnecessary. Just me. And again, this is when the Mike stuff, I thought was really drawn out. We got this crazy long montage of him ripping apart the car, which, don't get me wrong, great montage, great editing, great music and everything, but storytelling wise, I don't think we really needed it. If we did need it, certainly didn't need to be that long. Again, this is where I felt they were being a bit self-indulgent. But it's because it's all leading to the point where he finally figures out that the bug was hidden in his gas cap where he puts in the gasoline, And he figures this out, so he works to try to find a way. And it kind of blends together with the next episode because it takes so long for him to find a way to try to get back with, which is all leading up to the real reveal of Gus Fring. Like, at this stage, I think part of the reason why I find these things tedious is because as a viewer, and maybe it's because I'm, obsessed with the show and I keep track of stuff, I know it's Gus Fring, and I'm just waiting for them, come on, get to the point, and they have to wait, keep us hanging all the way into episode 3. And I'm like, we know who it is, for fuck's sake, just reveal it. Jesus Christ. Or is it episode 2? I think it's episode 2. So it is. Is it the next episode? I can't even remember. I'm pretty sure it is because I think Jimmy did the thing before he got arrested. So yeah, it's the next episode. But still, I still think they could, we know it's Gus Fring. Anyway, so this episode is okay. So let's get into the next episode, Witness, which I do like this episode a lot better. Even though I think the Mike stuff still meanders a bit, as I said. But it's an interesting coda where it begins with Chuck hanging out with a private investigator, and you kind of don't know what's up. And I think they ominously clued in because Hamlin made it clear to Chuck, like, there's nothing, you can't use this tape in court of evidence, in a court of law, it's not gonna, Jimmy can easily destroy it, so what's the point of it? And Chuck's like, I got a point, and they leave you hanging to what Chuck's intends to do with it. In fact, as I said, this is something I saw in discussions between seasons, which a lot of people were like, well, what's the point of Chuck recording that? Like, it's not going to do him any good. It's not, they can't be used as evidence against Jimmy. And so this is, I love how Hamlin addresses that too, and Chuck seems to have a plan. And here we see, at the start, as I said, sort of hints at what that plan may be, and it makes you curious because he's hanging out with the private investigator. But then at the end of the episode, it all comes together. And I do like how they slowly build that. How Chuck is using Ernesto. God, I'm going to get into Chuck later. But how Chuck is using Ernesto to sort of, he knows that he's going to tell Jimmy. So Chuck is really acting like slipping Jimmy here. Let's just say that. Let's just call it as it is. That I think Chuck is kind of real because he's always been like the straight and narrow, but he's so vindictive and wants so badly to get back at Jimmy that he knows that he has to sink to Jimmy's level and play at his game in order to get him. Which, let's make this clear. The only reason it works because Jimmy is a much better con artist than Chuck. And you can't con a con man, but the only reason that it works is because Jimmy wouldn't expect it from Chuck, because Jimmy still trusts Chuck and thinks of him as a brother, even after all the fights and bullshit that they've been through together. Jimmy still cares for Chuck, which was made clear at the season 2 finale, where he was willing to confess in order to make Chuck feel better, which I'll get back to that a bit later on because that also comes back into play. But anyway, so Jimmy still cares for Chuck, but Chuck, for his part, doesn't care for Jimmy. And I'll talk about that a little bit in the next episode, but Chuck's really vindictive and self-righteous and out to get Jimmy and has no regard for him whatsoever, despite his claims otherwise. And so Jimmy doesn't realize that. And Jimmy, when he realizes what Chuck did by taping him and setting the whole thing up, that's when he realizes that even though he still cares for Chuck, despite their differences, Chuck doesn't care for him and is willing to betray him like that. And so that's what sets him off. That's what makes him explode. And Chuck was counting on it and again manipulated him. And goddamn, that was such a powerful ending. After Jimmy threatens Chuck and Hamlin and the private investigator come out and like, I'm a witness. And that's when Jimmy realizes that the whole thing was a setup. Again, Chuck is slipping Jimmy. He's being a con man. And Jimmy just wouldn't expect his brother to do something like that to him because, frankly, Jimmy would never do anything like that to Chuck before, at this stage. We're not talking about after the stage, because now Chuck has thrown all the rule books out the window, so Jimmy doesn't care. So, yeah, and I think, as I said, I think this is the episode where Mike has Jimmy go to the Los Polios Hermanos to, try to spy on that guy, that Gus's man, to see where the money is going. And I love this scene's funny because Jimmy does such a horrible job, and it's funny because that is Mike. That's how Gus figures out Mike's onto him. That was Mike's mistake, was to use Jimmy. Of course, he couldn't do it himself because Gus recognized him and would spot him and know him, so he would need to use someone that Gus doesn't know, which is why he used Jimmy. But really, he should have went to another private investigator. Maybe that Pimento guy, the dude from Walking Dead, Simon. Maybe he should have. Well, that guy's a bit of a maniac, though. But he could have went to a different private investigator and used him. I think his mistake was using Jimmy, who sucked at it. And that scene was so funny because Jimmy was just staring at that guy so intensely. And I do love the subtle filming of the way where you barely see in the blurred background, you see Gus Fring. You don't see his head, but you know it's Gus Fring. And you see him just sweeping the floors, and he just casually moves towards, the guy with the bag, and then casually moves away. And so it's very, very subtly telling you that Gus gave that guy a signal, hey, don't do the drop because there's some dude in business suit staring at you. Oh, God. And, of course, we got the interaction between Gus and I love how clueless Jimmy was, too, when he went to report to Mike. He's like, I looked through the trash. He ordered this. He ordered that. And he just he's just totally oblivious to the fact of how terrible of a job he did. So I did kind of enjoy that. So, yeah, I did like this episode quite a bit. So then we get into the next episode, Sunk Costs. Again, I also really like this episode. So it starts off, and I think probably that scene at the start where Jimmy was sitting outside waiting for the police to come and arrest him, and Chuck came out and talked to him. I think this was Chuck. I never hated Chuck more than I did at this moment. I think this was him at his most worst, most despicable, because he was being so absolutely condescending. Like, is one of the most egotistical, up his own ass, spiteful, condescending speeches I've ever seen on television. Because Chuck just comes out to Jimmy and is like, this is for your own good. This is for your better. You think I don't love you, but I do love you. He doesn't outright say it, but he's heavily implying you shouldn't be a lawyer. And this is for your better. You're going to be better off working in the mailroom or mopping floors or doing something else other than being a lawyer. Or cleaning toilets. You'll be happy. You're going to be a much better person, just as long as you're far away from the law, because I'm so much better than you, and I'm worthy of being a lawyer. You're just a scum. You can have a decent life being a scum, living your low life, but you can't have the high life as me. That's just not who you are, because you're a despicable person, because I am so much better than you. That is basically, it was oozing, his whole speech was oozing that. And Jimmy, I think the only reason Jimmy didn't go up and punch him in the face because he knew that would just make things worse for him, because his whole problem now is because he lost his temper, so he knew losing his temper again would be the absolute wrong thing to do. But his response was very appropriate, because Chuck starts off with, here's what's going to happen, Jimmy. You're going to get a review, and starts laying out his condescending bullshit speech. And Jimmy's response was going to be like, no, here's what's going to happen. And I love that, because he's answering condescension with condescension. He's like, oh, you think you're all high and mighty and know exactly what's going to go down? No, actually, I'm all high and mighty, and I know what's going to go down. So he says, here's what's going to happen, Chuck. One of these days, you're going to end up in the hospital again, You're gonna get sick, and you're gonna the doctors are gonna be having all this electricity that's gonna be causing you pain, and I won't be there to help you. No one will be there to help you. You're gonna die alone and miserable. And I think that that's a very appropriate response for several reasons. First of all, I think it's appropriately vindictive because Chuck is being all high and mighty, and Jimmy doesn't try to dispute his claims or try to argue with his logic. He just answers it with being equally as condescending, which again is appropriate. Also, specifically remarking and avoiding the topic, in fact, of his legal troubles or whether or not Jimmy will be a lawyer, instead addresses the fact that Jimmy was the one who's been basically in bringing up the fact in subtle ways that Jimmy was the one who's been taking care of Chuck. Jimmy put all of that time and effort and love and care, and that he was doing it out of love. I mean, there was no ulterior motive for Jimmy to take care of Chuck. Absolutely not. It was completely out of a place of brotherly love. And Chuck responds to all of that love and care and attention and that time that Jimmy's been caring for him by trying to destroy him, trying to destroy his career and actively go after him. And I honestly think that makes Chuck a horrible, horrible person. And he's very conceited and self-absorbed, I think is the right way. He's kind of up his own ass, where he's convinced himself that Jimmy is just a despicable human being that doesn't deserve anything. And to be fair to some people who see the other side of the argument, to be fair, Jimmy reinforces his belief with his actions by doing connish type things like the whole billboard thing and of course the whole doctoring his thing, which attacked him personally. But of course, as I talked about in season 2, that Jimmy did that in response to Chuck going after going after Jimmy through Kim, which is really despicable. So not saying that two wrongs make a right, but kind of more of Chuck is the one who escalated things. And Chuck is the one who forgot that Jimmy was the one who cared for him as a brother, and he completely disregarded that and had no care for him. Now he's trying to act like he does care for him, and this is all for his betterment, his good, which is a big load of bullshit, which of course Jimmy instantly recognizes that for what it is and calls it out and says, I'm no longer going to care for you. You're going to die alone and you're going to be fucked. Which I do think those words do come into play towards the end of the season as well. So it is, I can't help but feel, even myself, feel a little sorry for Chuck. But, and especially when you consider that he does have a mental illness, but I still don't think that is any excuse for how vindictive and self-absorbed and condescending that he is with Jimmy in this scene. Anyway, so then in this episode we get, Jimmy has to go to jail, and we get the scene with that other district attorney lawyer. I love that guy so much, coming in and sort of mocking Jimmy for being arrested. And then Kim shows up to represent him, and Jimmy flat out refuses to be represented by her, which kind of creates a rift between him and her. But he goes to her and explains, look, I know you're super, super busy with Mercer Verde. I don't, this is my fault, this is my problem, this is my mistake. I don't want it to reflect poorly on you or to cost you anything. And she accepts that, but you can tell that she's still not okay with it, because she knows she does want because Jimmy feels guilty. He honestly, and again, this is him being genuine. He really doesn't want this to hurt Kim, because he feels bad about being used. As he said, that Chuck played him like a fiddle, and of course he's feeling like an idiot for falling right into Chuck's trap. And so he feels even worse if this would hurt Kim and her business affairs in her life, and doesn't want this to But as things progress and Chuck's power play and what Chuck's real play starts to come into account, is that what he really wants to do is not have Jimmy arrested, but take away his law license. That's his ultimate goal. So when the attorney comes in that's prosecuting Jimmy's case, he sort of talks her into doing I'm not gonna say the legal terms of it, but basically a probation for a year. But which has him get off, but in doing so, he has to confess to a felony, which would result in the loss of his law license. And I love the scene where he goes to Kim, and he explains. He's like, it says the thing about the probation. She's like, "Oh, that's great. That's the best thing we can hope for," and it's so great. Chuck's gonna be so upset, and Jimmy's like, "Actually, it was Chuck's idea," and she immediately goes, "Oh my god." Okay, so what's his play? So she immediately recognizes that it's not a good thing if it's what Chuck wanted. And then he goes on to explain the thing about the law license and how that's Chuck's play, is to take away his law license. And then Kim sort of was like, okay, we have to fight this. And Jimmy then again insists, no, you can't be involved. I don't want this to hurt you and your time. But then she brings up the title of the episode, which this always stuck with me. I didn't really know the term sunk cost. I think it was mentioned before in the show as well, maybe in Breaking Bad or another show. But I wasn't as familiar until this episode really hit it in, where now it's part of my vocabulary. Where she says, she mentions up that first of all, that Jimmy, you can't do this on your own. You need me. But he's just like, why would you want to do this? And she says, well, there's a sunk cost fallacy because I put all this effort and time into you already, so I gotta see it through. It's sunk cost and all that, and I love that. I thought it was quite an amazing scene. So then we also get the Mike stuff this episode, which drags a little bit. Oh no, that was the previous episode. The previous episode ended with, I always get these episodes confused, sorry. But the previous episode ended with him getting the phone call from Gus. And here we see that he actually meets Gus finally, and how Gus is like, I can't have you kill Hector, but you hurt Hector, and I kind of like that. So if you want to keep hurting him, I'm all for that. And so basically they come to an arrangement where they work together to basically destroy Gus's distribution, because they set up a truck for having cocaine on it, and had this whole scene with Mike out in the desert shooting his gun, pretending there's hunters nearby so that the drivers don't think anything of it when he fires the shot that hits the sock that he threw up on the shoe that he threw up on the wire that kills cocaine over the thing, and then they get arrested when they try to cross the border. Nifty. I may be drawn on a little bit too long, but it's still nifty. Anyway, then we get into the next episode, Saboristo, which I think deals more with the Mike and Gus storyline. More of Gus, actually. It focuses a lot on Gus, which all of a sudden he's the main character now, which of course I'm perfectly okay with. And now, when I try to think about this, would a show do this if we weren't already familiar with Gus, if he already wasn't a fan favorite, if we already didn't know him from Breaking Bad, because they just introduced him like an episode or two ago. He was barely in the second episode, and then we see him in the previous episode. Now all of a sudden he's the focus of pretty much the whole episode. But I think, actually, I think so. I think there are examples of other shows, even with new characters we never met before. We meet them, and then all of a sudden they get their own episode, and it works. And there are other shows. I can't think of anything at the top. I think The Leftovers might have done that. But yeah, or Watchmen and stuff like that. I think it's a Lindelof thing. So it does so. It's okay, is what I'm saying. At first I was a bit iffy, are they relying? Because I don't want this show to rely too much on you have to have seen Breaking Bad. in order to get out. I want it to stand on its own 2 feet, and I think it does. But anyway, so we get the opening scene where it's just Don Ilario and Juan Volsa and Hector, and how I think it's a flashback to when they first started working with Gus, and how Hector was fucking furious and jealous over it, and how much he fucking hates Hector. And that kind of feels like it's directly feeding into Breaking Bad. I feel like you still could like the scene and get out of it if you had never seen Breaking Bad, but if you have seen it, there's a lot more meaning and power to it, especially knowing where all these characters end up. So, and of course, I think this is the first time they brought Don Ilario on Better Call Saul, who I think he was only in season 4 of Breaking Bad, if I remember. He was only in a couple of episodes, but anyway, it's so that was a great way to start the episode, because then the rest of the episode gets into the feud between Hector and Gus, and then how Hector shows up at the Los Pollos Hermanos and threatens his employees, which was a pretty powerful scene. And so Gus has kind of thought he got the better of Hector for, fucking up his supply chain, but it resulted in Hector kind of trying to use him and throw his weight around and show power, about doing Gus becoming his new supply a way, smuggler, way to get this stuff across the border, which of course Gus isn't happy about, and then Gus later comes up with a plan to sort of get the better of Hector. Anyway, also in this episode we got the build up for the next episode with the Jimmy storyline, where Jimmy has to, is doing this apology thing. We see that him and Kim have a plan of attack, but we don't know what this is, and I like that. I think that's very interesting that they're keeping it in the dark. It makes it more suspenseful and great build up for the next episode, particularly when they go to court and they do accept the probation deal, which is the first part of the issue. The second part, of course, still in the next episode when they try to take away Jimmy's law license. But the first part, he's all for, of course, taking the probation deal, and he has to apologize to Chuck. And you tell, I love that scene, because you really tell that Jimmy, hates Chuck's guts and wants to get the better of him, and how he's forced to apologize and try to sound sincere, and he does his best acting job. And he's like, I'm sincerely sorry. I'm so sorry. That was wrong of me. Is that good now? Are you happy? Can I go home? He kind of drops the facade there. But, and that was sort of really powerful setup for what was to come next. So this was a decent episode too. So then we get into the next episode 5, Chicanery, which is a very well-known, popular episode, and for very, very good reason. I remember being completely blown away by it when I first saw it. Now, I think they may touch slightly on the Mike and Gus storyline this episode, but not very much. It just kind of touch on it. It's mainly about the Jimmy stuff and the disciplinary hearing. And again, they do a sort of Perry Mason thing, where you can tell that Jimmy and Kim have a plan, but you don't know what that is. But I love how there's like sort of cracks in the plan, because someone's supposed to fly in the airport, and their flight's been delayed, and that could mess with Jimmy's plan, but you don't know who it is. And then you see Jimmy go to that vet guy to try to hire a pickpocket, and then you see Huel. I remember when they showed Huel on the screen for the first time, I was cheering. I was like, Huel! And again, you're not going to have that reaction if you've never seen Breaking Bad, but it still gets the point across that he's hiring a pickpocket. It's just, just a kind of normal story beat, unless you've seen Breaking Bad. Anyway, I love Huel. Anyway, So, and then I love the courtroom stuff. I think it's by far the best courtroom stuff that the show has ever done. Now, it's fun because there's this channel of a lawyer who breaks down movies and TV shows. He did like the first episode of Better Call Saul a while ago, and I've been waiting forever for him to cover Chicanery. I was hoping that he would, and he finally did, I think 2 months ago or last month. And so and it's funny, his reaction to it from a realistic standpoint is that some parts are like extremely realistic, and that this show gets it right when most is more realistic than most sort of courtroom dramas that kind of sort of dramatize things too much. However, other things are a bit iffy and a bit more like stereotypical courtroom dramas, such as the whole thing with Chuck's huge confession at the end. They said it was very Perry Mason like, and of course the whole thing with Jimmy's plan to use Huel to plant the battery on him. He was saying that in a real court of law that probably wouldn't fly. I mean, he says there's a slim possibility that could, but most likely it would not. That there was all like theatrics and the way Jimmy was questioning Chuck when he was in the stand was very unrealistic, because Jimmy was basically testifying himself while he was questioning Chuck. But of course, that was probably done for story convenience and time crunch. You can't always do courts exactly how they would be done in real life, because let's be fair, it's a little bit more boring in real life. You do have to bend some rules to make it more dramatic and satisfying for the audience to sit through and watch, which is what this episode does in spades. But all that aside, like, this is when I realized that the Emmys were total bullshit, and it was just a popularity contest or which production company gives them the most money or campaigns the most. That has nothing to do with who actually deserves the Emmy, because Michael McKean was not nominated for an Emmy for this performance in this episode. So therefore, and not just this, other reasons as well. They didn't nominate Peter Dinklage for the whole Tyrion trial speech either, and they nominated him for later seasons, or he won later seasons where he did a much worse job, or at least the writers did a worse job, to be fair, not the actor. But anyway, so because Michael McKean's performance in this episode was so brilliant, particularly when he lost his shit. Because even though it is kind of a Perry Mason moment, and that wouldn't actually happen in a courtroom. And it's funny because he does preface it by saying, this isn't Perry Mason. You're not going to get me to, confess everything. But that's exactly what he does, which is kind of ironic. But, the reason why it works so well is because it is so true to Chuck's character. It's so true to who he is as a person, that he would, and it shows his true colors. Basically, it shows that, and that's why this is so damning for him, because it reveals to everyone what his real agenda is. That he's vindictive, he's jealous. And this is all about trying to get at his brother, which is what damages their case. Ultimately, it allows Jimmy to keep his law license, which is what their plan was all along. Now, here's the thing. Chuck isn't totally wrong, which is why this is really dynamic and why I love this show and why it's so great. Is because Jimmy is in fact lying. Because Jimmy is he's making the argument that he lied to his brother in order to make him feel better. And his argument comes off very strongly here, especially when Chuck loses his temper. But that's actually not true. We know that's not true. We know that he actually did in fact doctor evidence. So Chuck is actually correct. And Chuck is correct that Jimmy has done some illegal stuff and is, maybe by some people's standards, not deserving of having a law license, particularly this Board of Inquiry standards. But at the same time, the whole reason why they're there is because Chuck set Jimmy up. He manipulated him. And this is the point I was sort of getting at earlier, is when Jimmy is questioning Chuck on the stand, he says, how did you know this provocation would work? Because Jimmy says, oh, you went through all this trouble to entrap me. He's like, and Chuck is like, I didn't entrap you, I just provoked you. And so Jimmy uses terminology. It's like, okay, so how did you know this provocation would work? Basically, how did you know that by pretending to be sick and mentally ill and putting up all these fucking quitting your job and putting up all the space blankets all over the place, making it look like a Jiffy Pop container, like, how did you know that would get him to confess? And the answer, and this is where Jimmy was he's in the right and he's being correct, the answer to that is because he knew that Jimmy cared about Chuck. He knew that Jimmy would be too upset to see Chuck go downhill and to see Chuck be upset. So, in fact, as much as Chuck may be correct in that Jimmy did in fact doctor the evidence, and that he did in fact do stuff illegal that is worthy of him losing his license, he still used the love and respect his brother had for him and used that against him in order to destroy him and take him down. And to me, that overrides how correct Chuck is. To me, that is absolutely despicable. If Jimmy is worthy of losing his law license, like, I don't think it's Chuck's job to make sure that happens, but Chuck has made it his job. Ever since the beginning of season 2, when Chuck showed up during the Davis and Maine thing with the Sandpiper case, he's like, I'm here to bear witness. Chuck made it his life's work to destroy Jimmy's career. And I don't think he's justified, no matter how right he is, that Jimmy has still got that con man thing. And to be fair, the more Chuck pushes against Jimmy, the worse Jimmy becomes. Which is also, I think, another whole point of the entire show, is that Jimmy only becomes the person he does, the despicable Saul Goodman that we see in Breaking Bad. He only becomes that person partly because of Chuck. Because first of all, Jimmy only wants to be a lawyer because of Chuck, but Jimmy wanted to be an upstanding, good lawyer, like a respectable lawyer like Chuck, until Chuck started attacking him and going after him. So the pristine image he had of this great older brother was then destroyed, and so he sort of lost all hope of, why should I be moral? Why should I try to play by the games? I should just be as despicable as I was being, because the world sucks and no one loves me, basically, because his brother showed that he didn't love him. So, and it's that really complex dynamic of the fact that Chuck, and this is where Kim picked up on, she mentioned in the previous season, she's absolutely correct on it. She mentions it again in the courtroom, part of her argument, is that Chuck's inability to believe in his brother is ultimately what corrupts him. It is what makes him worse. And to have that all play out in that amazing scene where he's like, he defecated on the sunroof. Like, when he brings that up, that pisses me off more too, because that's something he did like over 10 years ago, and it's showing how he's still like holding this shit in, and how vindictive he is, and he knows that's a mistake he made 10 years ago, and he knows he shouldn't have done that, and he never intended to do that with kids in the car, and for Chuck to still hold that against him and saying that that's why he doesn't deserve a law license shows how despicable Chuck is and how much he doesn't actually care about his brother, that he is being self-absorbed. And so I kind of feel that he absolutely deserved what he got. Now, Jimmy using Rebecca was kind of a really low blow, and I think he's aware of that, and I don't know how necessary it was. I guess he wanted to ensure that Chuck was off his game. which was successful. And Chuck knew that's what Jimmy was intending to do, but he still couldn't, even knowing that, he still couldn't help but be off of his game because of it. So it was successful. So that was underhanded. And I did kind of like the scene where Kim, says to Jimmy, it's like, look, she's never going to forgive you. And he's like, yeah, I know. Which is what we do see play out in the following episodes. But I'll get to that shortly. But the episode itself opened with a flashback to Rebecca and how Chuck refused to tell her of the condition, and that actually pushed her away. That their marriage actually could have been saved if Chuck just admitted his condition, but he refused to do it, and Jimmy tried to get her to do it, and Chuck was like, under no circumstances, because of his pride. That's a common theme in this Breaking Bad verse. People's pride always destroying them. But, yeah. What else? And of course, Huel showing up and testifying. Oh, God, what a great episode. What an amazing, amazing episode. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into the next episode, which is called Off-Brand. And as I said, here they kind of have to start over again, basically, because after, it's almost like a season premiere, really, because that such powerful episodes, almost like a season finale. So here they have to sort of pick up the pieces and show that Jimmy's he won, but he still has to have his law license suspended for a year, and how that's gonna cause him a lot of misery, and he has all this airtime that he can't do anything with because of it, and it shows and he has to do community service, which we'll get to in the next episode, and all the consequences thereof. And also, again, Rebecca shows up and sort of grills them as they're celebrating, and that makes Kim feel awful. And we see that play out, and of course, the next couple episodes where Kim is like I don't know if I remember if this episode or next one. Again, they kind of blend. But when Kim is having that talk with Paige from Mercer Verde, and she's like making fun of Chuck, and what an idiot, and that actually starts to really piss Kim off, and she explodes that Page, and then she apologizes for it and says, look, as far as I'm concerned, the only thing we did was to destroy a man with a mental illness. So you can tell that she's feeling so guilty, and it's definitely brought on by Rebecca showing up, is making her feel incredibly guilty about what she did to Chuck. But Jimmy does not have the least bit remorse about the whole thing, at least not yet. But again, most of the episode deals with him trying to, sell his commercial time, which is just something that we'll do over the next several episodes. Which, again, I feel it gets kind of slow paced, but it's still a decent episode. And then, of course, we also, I think this is the episode where Hector has the great idea, now that his supply chain is fucked and he doesn't want to be dependent on Gus forever, he gets the great idea to use Nacho's father, which of course is the worst thing in the world that could possibly happen to Nacho, and this sets up a whole thing. Anyway, I think I'm blending into the next episode, so let's get to the next episode. Expenses. The one thing I remember about this episode very clearly is that it starts with Jimmy doing his community service and having the asshole guy, because Jimmy's on the phone trying to sell his airtime, but the asshole guy won't give him all of his hours because he's not supposed to be on the phone. Jimmy tries to argue back, and the guy's like, well, I couldn't make it 0. And then later Jimmy orders Chinese food delivery, and he gives him $1 tip, and he's like, really, $1? And Jimmy's like, oh, well, I couldn't make it 0. It's like him trying to feel bad, lift himself up after being so humiliated. But on the personal note, I delivered food for my life, and I would never, and I don't know anyone else ever who would complain about a tip. It's very unprofessional. It's just going to guarantee you're not going to get a better tip if you complain about it. If anything, they'll just give you a worse tip next time. It reminded me of the time where I didn't have change, because usually I give out singles, so if they want to tip me they can, but I didn't have change. All I had was a $5, and I asked them, how much do you want back? And he's like, oh, give me $1. And then he said, hey, look, next time you shouldn't ask. You should just give it to me. And I'm like, but I don't have the fucking change. But, of course, I didn't say that because I'm professional. But that's what I wanted. Is I guess. So, I guess I'm still pissed off with that asshole for doing that. There's a reason why I asked. Because I don't have fucking change. But anyway, that's a side note. But anyway, that was unrealistic. I think maybe there are some local businesses where delivery drivers would behave that way. Maybe. But they shouldn't be in business. I think that would probably be more of a New York City thing if I were guessing, not Albuquerque. I did, in fact, deliver food in Albuquerque. But anyway, where was I? Oh, yeah. So yeah, this gets deeper into Kim's guilt that she's feeling. It gets deeper into Jimmy trying to sell his commercials. And I think this is the episode where it ends with them saying Saul Goodman, and they're like Saul Good, or was it, I don't know if that was a preview. Again, I get these episodes mixed up. Where it says where they first say the name Saul Goodman, and this for sure doesn't mean jack shit unless you've seen Breaking Bad. Even though the show is called Better Call Saul, so you know it's building up to Saul Goodman, which they teased before. But the way they revealed it, it's like, oh, Saul Goodman. And Jimmy's like, oh, it's just a name. They end the episode to make it, oh, get it, it's just a name. It doesn't matter. I don't know. That seemed a lot of prequelitis to me, but that they focused, not that they used the name Saul Goodman, fine, use it, but the fact that they made such a big deal out of it. But anyway. Alright, so I looked it up, and it was actually the last episode off-brand that ended this way, but that's all good. In this episode, they had the storyline with Mike, like, building a playground, and he met that woman who would become a recurring character, which, frankly, I never really thought that storyline really added anything, and I thought it was kind of dull, to be honest. But this episode, Nacho was trying to, was met up with Price again to sort of buy the capsule so he could switch out Hector's pills. And I absolutely loved the scene where Price had this like complicated alarm system like in this front door, and he had to go through this thing, and as soon as he closed the door, Nacho was already in his house waiting for him, and then Nacho just calmly leaves through the back door at the end. Yeah, good old Price. But then, of course, Price is smart enough to get Mike's help, and then they had to meet up with Mike and Nacho's. And Mike was sort of trying to talk him out of it, but he's like, I got no choice. I have to do it because he's going after my father. So Mike is just like, well, switch the pills back. You know, if you have to do this, switch them back. Which, yeah, that was an interesting dynamic. Anyway, the ending of this episode was actually really powerful. Well, kind of powerful. It's kind of... Alright, so Jimmy was having issues with his malpractice insurance, which they wouldn't refund him, so he's paid all this money for a year that he can't afford, but they won't give it back to him, even though he's not using it, which is rather shitty. So he goes to talk to him, and tries to talk him out of it, but they're really, steadfast. They're not going to change. They won't budge. And he starts to realize this, so he breaks down and starts crying because they reveal that once he does start practicing law again, his rates are going to skyrocket. They're going to go up by, I think they said 120%. And so he starts crying and freaking out, and during his little spat, he talks about all of the issues he's having, including how his brother had a freak out in court. That's on the record, and but he was trying to play it off like, oh no, please don't write this down. Don't write it down. It's okay. I'm sorry. I'll leave. And then when he leaves the room, you see he has this really angry, pissed off look on his face. Like the facade of crying and being all sad immediately drops, and he goes, fuck you, kind of look on his face. And that was amazing. And I dare say that is what ultimately led to Chuck's death. Basically, he killed Chuck in that meeting, even though he didn't intend to. But from his perspective, he was suffering through all this shit, trying to come up with his money, try to save money, and not having enough money to, he wanted to keep his office with Kim and all his other things, and he was in so much, turmoil, and it's all Chuck's fault. He really feels that it's Chuck's fault that he lost his license for a year and now is in financial ruin. And to be fair, I think he's right. I think it's absolutely Chuck's fault because Chuck is the one who set him up. Now you could get into the blame game and say like, well, it's Jimmy's fault for switching the numbers, but then I would go back even further and be like, well, then it's Chuck's fault for trying to ruin Kim just to get at Jimmy, which was very petty. So we could go back and back, but I think it ultimately is Chuck's fault. Because he is the one who purposely sought out. I mean, he went out of his way. Like Hamlin's saying, let's just let it go. But no, he wouldn't let it go because he was very vindictive. He was like, oh, the law must be satisfied. I can't let this. No, that's a whole bunch of bullshit. He has a vendetta against his brother because he's jealous of him. Plain and simple. So yeah, it's Chuck's fault. But of course, this does lead to tragedy. This sets forth a series of events that will destroy Chuck's life. And so it is interesting. Next season kind of deals with this more, seeing how this affects Jimmy. And I don't think Jimmy realized in the moment just how badly this would affect Chuck's life, that he's basically killing him by doing this. That wasn't his intention, I'm sure. He just wanted Chuck to feel some of the pain that he was feeling because he blamed Chuck for it, which, again, not incorrect. Anyway, so yeah, I did like the ending of that episode, but I think, and the stuff with Nacho was interesting too, but the majority of it was kind of dull. So I always think of this as kind of especially that Mike stuff, I thought that was really boring. Anyway, let's get into the next episode. Is an episode called Slip, which of course has a double meaning because this is the episode in which Jimmy pulls the slip. He literally does slipping Jimmy in this episode. So he's trying to sell his commercial airtime now. His way of doing it is because he can't legally sell the airtime, but what he can do is producing a video, making a video for a company, and then giving them the airtime for free. That was his sort of workaround, and he wants to charge them exactly for what he owes because he wants to make this money back. But he goes, and it works well for him in several cases, and then he goes to this, I think it might have been the previous episode, but he goes to the music store, and they refuse. They don't want to pay for it. They think it's too much money. They don't think it's going to help them, and so he films the ad for free for them, and it ends up working really well for them, and they get tons of business. So they're like, oh yeah, let's do more commercials. But there's two brothers, and one of them is always like, yeah, let's do it. Always really nice to Jimmy, but the other is like really skeptical and a bit of an ass. And so that brother actually looked up that Jimmy doesn't work for the station, and he's like, well, I never said I did. Look, Saul Goodman Productions. I never said I worked for the TV station. And they're like, well, they're selling airtime for $450, and why are we paying all this money? And they're like, no, you're not paying for the airtime. I mean, you could have airtime for $450, but you're paying for me to produce the videos for you. And they're like, well, we already have this video, so why don't we just air that? And then Jimmy was like, well, not to get technical here, but that commercial that I film for free is actually not your property. It's intellectual property of Saul Goodman Productions. And then they got all pissy. They're like, oh, even the nice brother was like, oh, okay, you want to play it like that? Okay, fine. That $450 offer, gone. Oh, they offered them like 450. Oh yeah, because the nice brother, I was like, yeah, he did film it for free, so maybe we should give him 450 for for that video or whatever, to make it fair and even. And Jimmy was like, of course, he rejected that because he wanted the money, the full amount that he needs to pay back. But that's when they were like, even the nice brother turned on him. When he said that thing about, oh, it's my intellectual property. It's like, oh, you want to play it that way? Oh, fine. We'll just make our own commercial. What are those? Just like students from the University of New Mexico? We'll just get our own film students and we'll make our own commercial. We don't need you. Get out of here. Now, I think these brothers were being assholes. Now, again, you can make the argument that Jimmy was swindling them a bit, but I don't think so. But here's the big count against them, that Jimmy did film that commercial for free. And I think as an audience who's watching this show, you sympathize with Jimmy more because you see that the toll that filming that commercial free took on him, and just how down he was because of it, and that his money troubles are like huge, and that he still had to pay the film students, even though, so he's like he went out of pocket to make them that commercial, and for them to turn around and be like, whoa, we don't have to pay you anything, we'll just take that commercial. That was a biggest asshole response. That was like the biggest asshole thing you could possibly do. So I think Jimmy was absolutely in the right to be like, well, no, I own that commercial, because that was really despicable of them to even consider doing that. And then they're like, oh, we'll just pay you for the amount that you pay the heir. They're just trying to penny pinch and save money, and not realizing, like, I think the fact that he filmed a whole commercial for free is what makes the biggest difference in the world, and that's what makes them the bad guys. That's what makes them the total asshole pricks in this situation, regardless of whether or not Jimmy is overcharging them. I still think they're completely in the wrong for not taking that into account and trying to cut him out entirely after he filmed a commercial for free. Like, that was bullshit. But anyway, so Jimmy's response to this is, of course, to pull the Slipping Jimmy act and have pulls out a drumstick, tosses it on the floor, and tells the film student guy to film him, and does the perfect slip where he really sells it, and then it's like, oh, you guys have insurance, right? Now, I thought he was doing this for money, but apparently not, because all he got out of it was that guitar. I believe so, because you see him later with that guitar that was signed by someone from Deep Purple, whatever, and he's just sitting there plucking it, so he's not even going to sell it for money, even though it's worth a lot. But so basically he wasn't doing it. I mean, he gets a nice guitar, but he wasn't doing it for the money. He was basically doing it to get back at them. To be like, oh yeah, you're going to screw me? Well, I'll screw you. And again, I kind of can't blame him for that. But, I mean, calling the episode Slip does kind of have a double meaning, because it's not only did he slip, but it's kind of like he's slipping back into becoming the con man, the Slipping Jimmy con man again, when worse comes to worse. So, yeah, I kind of like that. And I also like this episode because it had the storyline with Nacho, where he's trying to switch the pills with Hector, Hector's pills, and you see him practicing for a long time. I think that was quite powerful. I love the way that was filmed. It's like the whole tension when he actually did go to switch the pills, like the way that whole scene was filmed and played out was super intense. It's one of the most intense scenes, and it was just acted so well. Like, you could, with the actor who plays Nacho, you could tell just how invested, and you actually feel for him as well. You feel for his situation, that his father is basically, his life is in danger, and he's kind of at his last resort. So that was super intense as well. And and then you have Kim again, sort of feeling guilty over what she did with Chuck. And also Chuck, I think you get in this episode as well, as he starts to go out to the grocery store and starts to recover, because he actually, in an odd way, him like freaking out like that in court kind of helped him, because it made him realize that his condition was mental and not physical, and so he started looking at it more as a mental condition, which is more conducive to help him overcome it, because if he thinks of it as a physical condition, it's something that he can't control. There's nothing he can do about it. It doesn't matter, if I'm trying to think, like, if I have cancer, I can't like think happy thoughts and wish the cancer away. But if you have a mental illness, you can try to overcome it with using the power of the mind, which is difficult, not easy to be sure. But with help, professional help, which he actually went out and sought. Which he went to the doctor at the hospital, which seems like he should have gone to a psychiatrist. So that would have made more sense. But they wanted to keep the same characters and actors, and that's fine. So he went out and sought help, and he had the routines to say the colors of things to try to help himself through it. And he went out and did grocery shopping, and started recovering. So that was interesting. I really like this episode. And we also see that Mike makes a deal with Gus to launder his money. And Gus, as I said, is probably sees. You can tell that Mike is a really powerful asset. And at first, not at the moment, Mike is not willing to work for Gus, but Gus is playing the long game here, because he can see just how useful Mike would be. So he's willing to help him. And plus, Mike already helped Gus out and refused to take payment, so Gus would also consider that he still owes Mike, and he's a responsible businessman, so he wouldn't want to screw him. Especially an ally who could be useful in the future. So that was interesting too. Anyway, we'll get into the next episode, which is called Fall. So this is the episode 9, but it's not the powerful episode 9 that most seasons have, but it's still a good episode. It's still a really good episode. I don't like the Jimmy storyline in it, though. It kind of, it's kind of cringy to me, because he, basically tries to con the old women who, he, used to be his clients, and who think the world of him, and they think he's the nicest guy ever, and he tries to use that against them. And how very intricate and specific his like cons are, the way he plays them to try to basically get the sandpiper money. Which I know I do feel for Jimmy in his financial situation, that he's in a rut and he needs help desperately. But I think this is kind of stooping too low. Because he wants to try to convince the main client, apparently, who's like the head client and who can make the final decision, trying to convince her to take the deal early, because they had already offered them a deal, but Davis and Maine and the law firms are telling her not to do it, that they could hold out for more money, which I can kind of see how that actually might not be a smart move. Apparently, it's, according to Kim and everyone else, is expected. Like, you're not expected to settle a huge class action lawsuit this soon, and it would be weird to do it, but Jimmy wants to. And so he does this intricate con to try to get them to settle, but in doing so, how he does it is that he alienates, I can't remember her name, but the main client, he alienates her from the rest of her friends and makes her friends jealous and hate her and think that the only reason she's not taking the sandpiper money is because she's being selfish. And so basically, he ruins her life, and she becomes really miserable because none of her friends will talk to her anymore. And I hate seeing this. I don't think it's necessarily out of Jimmy's character, but it is one of the lowest, most despicable things. Like even with some of the other shit that he's done before, like the slip or switching doctoring the numbers, or whatnot. Any of those other things, like they're not good things, and he shouldn't be doing them. But you can kind of see his point of view on it. But here, I mean, you can see his point of view in the fact that he's desperate for money. But that, to me, this is less excusable and more despicable. Especially the way that he plays it. Now, you could say, moving ahead to the next episode, that he does, once he realizes the damage he caused, he actually gives it up and is willing to give up the Sandpiper money in order to correct the wrong, and in doing so, he alienates all of his clients. So basically, that means by doing all this very interesting con that hurt, the relationship between, it really hurt this lonely old woman, actually ends up hurting him even more in the long run, because he doesn't get the Sandpiper money and he loses his connection to the elderly. So he shouldn't have done it in the first place. So it's difficult to watch these things because it is him falling. It's him completely fucking up. But I do like this episode better for the other storylines. We get the Kim storyline, which was really interesting. How she's just, throughout the season, we see how she's barely getting any sleep, that she's overworking herself, and then the dude from Mercer Verde suggests someone else he knows that needs help, and Kim goes to say, alright, I don't have time, I'll just consult with him and I'll point him in the right direction. But she sees his issues and she knows exactly how to deal with it, so she's too ambitious, and she's like, no, I can do it myself. And of course it overwhelms her that she's taking on way too much. She's getting no sleep, and we see her leaving to go out to a meeting with the guy. And I love the way this car crash is filmed. That is kind of from her perspective, is that she's just driving a little bit dozy, maybe not falling asleep, but just a little kind of out of it. And then instantly the scene cuts to her, like, after the crash with the airbag in her, and her like injured and bleeding, which I love that, because most shows, most movies will show show the character falling asleep and show them going off the road and show them crashing. But this actually puts you in the perspective of Kim, because if you've ever been in a car crash, that's what it's like. Basically, you're just driving along fine, and the next thing you know is like instantly you're looking and your car's wrecked and you're bloody and injured. That's what it feels like to be in a car crash, especially if you like fall asleep at the wheel like she did. So that was really powerful. I love the way that was filmed. And then, of course, the Chuck storyline starts to unravel, because Hamlin finds out that they are skyrocketing their malpractice insurance is skyrocketing for the whole entire firm because of what Chuck did, and Chuck wants to sue them. He threatens to sue them, but Hamlin doesn't want to do that. He thinks that they're right to do so, and he thinks to try to sue them would just dirty their name even more. He's being kind of the bureaucrat here. Instead, he wants Chuck to retire. But here's the thing: he doesn't ask Chuck to retire. He tells Chuck that he has to retire, and so that's why I think, in this episode and the next, where Hamlin kind of plays the innocent victim with Chuck, is like, how dare you betray me? Like, I was just doing what's right for the firm, and you stabbed me in the back. But I think he's being he's playing the innocent victim a bit too much. He didn't ask Chuck to retire. He didn't calmly, like, that's how he phrases it in the next episode. I calmly suggest that perhaps you retire. No, you did not. You said you must retire. You got no choice. So he's kind of being a bit of an ass, or playing the innocent victim when he doesn't deserve to be. And I can see how that could play on Chuck. And I love how when Hamlin comes over to see Chuck after this happened, Chuck is like, has all the electricity going. He's like operating this whiz stick, and he's acting all normal, and Hamlin's like shocked, and he's like, I told you I was better, I'm fine. And then the second Hamlin leaves, he's like, ah! Freaks out. Now granted, he can still be around that electricity, but he has to sort of calm himself. He was pushing himself too hard, and he has to like do the black pod and, you know, say the names of things and colors. But yeah, so that was a very interesting scene, or a very interesting storyline, I shall say. And then of course the Hector and Gus stuff gets worse because Bolsa is ordering. Not Bolsa, was Don Alardio is sort of ordering Hector to continue to smuggle his stuff through the border through Gus, which pisses Hector off. And also Gus doesn't like it either. He's like, I never wanted this. But Hector just really hates Gus so much that he just doesn't give a fuck, and he's starting to outright insult the people that he works for. In the meanwhile, you're just wondering when those pills are going to kick in and work. So that was quite powerful too. So very good episode. So we'll get into the finale of the season, A Lantern, which I actually think is in some ways an even more powerful episode. Again, the Jimmy stuff is resolved, where he realizes that he gets the Sandpiper case is going to happen, but then what's her face, the elderly woman's friend, still won't talk to her, and he tries everything to try to fix it, but he can't fix it. And then he realizes the only thing he can possibly do is to come clean and take all the blame, and as I said, this alienates himself. It's like he never really should have done that. So now he's just as bad as he was before, but on top of that, he's burned more bridges. But then, of course, it also deals with the aftermath of Kim's crash, and he actually becomes a different person. I think that's also what led him to change his mind to actually give up the money to help the elderly friends, because Kim almost dying really sparked something in him and made him realize that keeping the office and all this other stuff that he wanted didn't really matter, and made him like see what really mattered when Kim almost died. And he also started to think about his relationship with his brother differently, because he went to Chuck to try to like smooth things over, and Chuck was just being a huge asshole about it, which I'll get into his side of things later. But he started to regret everything he done, and started to look at life in a different way because of Kim's car crash. And Kim, for herself, she started to just realize that she was overworking herself, and just rejected all the work, and just went to Blockbuster and just got a whole shitload of movies, just sat around and watched movies all day, which I actually think was the right decision for her mental health, because she was working herself too hard. So that was interesting to see. And then, of course, the Hector and the Gus stuff come to a head, where they have another meeting, and like Nacho was like this close to just going, because the pills weren't working yet, so he was this close to going and just shooting Hector. But quite serendipitous. Right before he did that, the goons showed up. It was like, oh, good thing you're here. You must have heard. He's like, yeah, sure. And so there's a meeting with Gus, and then they have what's his face? Juan Bosa shows up and tells him that the way they've been smuggling it through Gus's thing is going to continue, and Hector freaks the fuck out and starts yelling. It's like, I'm Salamanca, built this, and Juan, Bolsa is just like, wait, you are, that's not cool. You don't defy a cartel boss like that. But Hector doesn't give a fuck. But that's when he has this huge freak out and reaches for his pills, and they don't help him, and that's when he collapses. And then you see Nacho very expertly trying to switch the pills back, just like Mike said. However, Gus sees him do this. And you can tell by the look on Gus's face, the way he just looks at Nacho, that he knows what Nacho did. And this will have, of course, huge repercussions for Nacho going forward. And as audience members who've seen Breaking Bad, we know that this is how Hector becomes paralyzed in the wheelchair and has to ring the bell. But that, of course, will play out during the course of the next season. But we already know that is going to be the end result because we've seen Breaking Bad. So that was very powerful too. Now, the Chuck storyline, of course, is the most poignant of this episode because this is, in fact, his final episode. Because it is really tragic because Chuck was on an upswing. He was getting better. Maybe not as good as he pretended to be with Hamlin, but he was still improving. However, Hamlin was trying to force him out of his law firm, which was his life, so he responded by suing Hamlin, which of course pissed off Hamlin beyond belief, and Hamlin was so upset and felt betrayed. And so, but Chuck's goal was to get Hamlin to rescind this, forcing him to retire and welcome him back to the firm, because he knew that Hamlin couldn't afford to pay Chuck what the firm would owe him to buy him out. But Hamlin surprises Chuck and decides to pay him out anyway. And he even goes as far as to use his own money to pay Chuck off. So he'd rather Chuck. So he's still adamant that Chuck leaves. But now he feels betrayed. And they had that scene where he tries to pretend like that Chuck is retiring on his own thing, on his own will to the whole firm. They all clap as he leaves. Damn, that was hollering. And yeah, you could argue that this has all happened because of what Jimmy said to them about practice insurance. Now, you could assume that maybe they would find out about this by themselves eventually, but Jimmy definitely is what kicked it in motion, and he did it specifically as a vendetta against Chuck. And so now Chuck has he lost his firm, he lost his friend with Hamlin, his life is like unraveling, completely falling apart. And that's why when he has this change of heart where Jimmy is like trying to reconcile, Chuck is like, I never really cared for you in the first place. I don't even love you. And it basically is saying, like, being really heartless to Jimmy. But that is a result of his mental illness, and is a result of the state of mind that he's in after what he just suffered with Hamlin, which, by the way, Hamlin is not the innocent victim here. I mean, Hamlin could have welcomed Chuck back to the firm and tried to smooth things over, but he's just such a PR, we gotta have a good reputation for my firm, and that was more important than his friend, Chuck. So his, you betrayed me thing, not really buying it, Mr. Hamlin. I'm sorry. But anyway, so of course this leads to Chuck just basically killing himself, just knocking over the lantern. Then you had that really breaking scene, of course, that montage where Chuck, of course, completely, all the progress he made with his illness completely fell apart. And so he's probably even worse than what he was, where he goes to his house and tries to rip out all the electricity. And he sees that the counter is still counting and it's freaking him out. So he's like tearing down walls. It's just really showing like the poor mental state that he's in. It's funny because this is basically what he pretended to be like at the end of season 2 with the, having the Jiffy Pop, space blankets all over the house. This is him. That's him pretending to have a breakdown. This is actually the real breakdown of what he actually just pretended to do last season. And but of course, it's his mind is so deteriorated from it that he just kills himself. Knocks over the lantern, purposely setting the house on fire, which was a powerful way to end the season. And of course, Chuck's legacy will haunt the show going forward, but this is the end of Chuck on the show. And as much, he did bring a lot of dynamic to the show, but I think this was a great way to end this character. And of course, as I said, he still sort of what happened, his story with him and Jimmy it still dictates where Jimmy's going to go in the future, particularly this death, as we'll see in season 4, how much it will really affect him. Alright, so anyway, those are all the episodes of season 3 of Better Call Saul. So now, as always, I will name the worst, my least favorite and my favorite episodes of the season. And we'll start with my least favorite. There's only 2 episodes. Again, there's no bad episodes. They're more of average than they are bad. But you have the first episode of the season, Mabel, which I said moved a bit too slowly. But as for my least favorite episode, I'm going to have to name Expenses as my least favorite. Even though I did have that ending with Jimmy sort of going to the malpractice insurance, and I had the nacho stuff, which was also interesting. But other than that, I thought this episode was kind of boring, and most of it was too slow and unnecessary, about like Jimmy going to the community service, or Mike building the playground, or Kim, just setting up Kim's storyline with the Mercer Verde stuff. It was kind of, so as I said, not a bad episode. No bad episodes this season, but definitely my least favorite of the season. So anyway, we'll get into the best episodes of the season, and there's a lot more of these. There's Witness, Sunk Cost, Saporisto, Fall, Slip, and Lantern, which was also powerful. But as for the best episode of the season, of course, gonna have to go with Chicanery. May in fact be the best episode of the entire show. It was such an amazing episode, such great acting, such great character implications of what Jimmy and Kim were willing to do to defeat Chuck, and how they're not necessarily in the wrong. As I said, Kim was actually correct that Jimmy thinks the world of Chuck, and that Chuck's response of trying to destroy Jimmy is just making things worse, and that Chuck is being very jealous and vindictive. But on the other hand, this is a person suffering from a mental illness, so is it really the best thing to purposely provoke him by bringing his ex-wife in front of him, provoke him into having a huge breakdown in court, which as we'll see, there'll be dire consequences for him going forward because of this, which will end to him committing suicide. So it's that perfect gray area that Better Call Saul does best. But on top of that, of course, you get amazing scenes. You get Huel back, and you get that amazing, the whole courtroom. I love courtroom dramas personally, and this is basically the only episode in the entire show which is about lawyers to actually be like a courtroom drama. And as I said, there's parts of it's more realistic, but other parts is really sort of typical of courtroom drama, which I kind of like because I kind of like that. And Chuck breaking down, oh my god, that was just amazing acting from Michael McKean. So yes, amazing episode. So my rating for Better Call Saul season 3 as a whole, I'm going to give this out of 10. I'm going to give this a 9. I was teetering back and forth between 8 and 9. In fact, I wrote 8 in my notes. But once going through the episodes again and seeing all the good stuff and the powerful stuff that the season has done, yes, at times it did move too slowly, unnecessarily, but just it's the intricate character stories that they tell this season, I think, are extremely powerful. So it's a low 9, like it's teetering on an 8 for sure, but I think I'm gonna top this on a 9. Settle it. It stops on a 9, not an 8. It's either a high 8 or a low 9, but I'm gonna call it a low 9. So definitely a really great season. So that's it for my episode by episode review of Better Call Saul Season 3. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to check out my channel as I continue to cover Better Call Saul, as well as covering many other shows such as The Expanse, Star Trek, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.